Hi guys, this is Atco. I want to show you my part 2 of my Philco model 3815. All I did so far was just kind of go over it, see how things look and what am I going to have to do with this from here. Alright, with this part 2, let's go into it, look a little closer. Now you can see in the chassis, first problem I have is that it's pretty dirty in there. So first I'll pull out the tubes and then blow out some compressed air the best that I can, and then also go through a little brush and get as much dirt as I can out of the chassis, and it looks pretty good. Alright, now when I looked at the tubes, there were 5 tubes in there, and a few of them had these caps on the top of the tube, so that I'm used to the tubes that have all the pins go on the bottom, including the plate. Some of the earlier tubes, the plate actually goes up to the top of the tube, and then a wire of the plate comes out of the top, and then they put a metal can on top of it to protect it, and then connect to that using a cable. Alright, so I had a few of those. One of them, unfortunately, in the way of trying to take off the clamp for the cable, I pulled the cap right out. Oh man, so this was a 6A7 tube, so I don't know how hard it is to get one of those, and I didn't know whether I actually ruined this tube or not. So I got on to the antique radio forum, and what I request, what do you do when you see something like that? I had quite a few responses. It said just put a little contact cement on the bottom of the tube top and on the bottom of the can. Push it right up to the top and then let that set overnight. And then I looked at it and then put it into my tube tester. Came out and at least that said it's good. Alright, now that's good because I had tested the other 4 tubes, and this appears to be one of the strongest tubes that I have. Most of them are just barely into good, but at least I didn't have any bad ones, so we'll see how things go from there. One of the things I had was that I wasn't able to turn the tuning from the knobs, and I had thought that it was the string was broken, but it's not. I think just the tuning capacitors were just kind of really dirty and were just so tight to try to move around, which I could move them by hand on the tuner itself, but when I tried to turn using the knobs, it would just slide. I couldn't get the tuning to move at all. So I got some of this little oil that I use for different things, and I put some of that oil along the edges of the shaft of the tuning capacitors, and then started moving it around a little bit. Then I tried turning things with the knob, and that worked. It's got it loose, and I think I might need put a little more in there and move it around a little bit. I think that's going to work okay, and I'm not going to have to worry about placing that string. Alright, so now I think what I should do is get the main capacitors. I haven't ordered anything yet. The main capacitors that we know that are very going to be bad, that are 70 years old. Those will be mostly the wax capacitors and the electrolytics. Alright, so I got 5 or 6 of those that I'll have to order. And then if you see at the top of the chassis, there's a can there that's got 2 electrolytics inside of that can. One is a 10 microfarad and one's a 12 microfarad. So I'll have to order those. When I look in there, there's another electrolytic that's on the bottom of the chassis. When I look at that, I see that it says it's got 2 30 microfarad capacitors in there. I couldn't find that at all on the schematic. What I did find is with the schematic there is a need for 2 electrolytic, with one being a 2 microfarad and one being a 4 microfarad. And I could see the one that was in the chassis. You could see with the soldering that was not the original. That had been changed. And maybe the original one went bad, and this is an awful way off from what was supposed to be there, but that might be all that somebody was able to use. It was too far off and I didn't want to use it. I did also look when I was on one of the forums and that is what's supposed to be there, is a 2 microfarad and a 4 microfarad. So okay, I'm going to have to order those, and both of those are 450 volts. And then the only other thing on there that I wanted to start with was there's this Bakelite block. I didn't know what that was. So I looked into that a little bit, and it's a Bakelite condenser. Apparently what it is the capacitors in there that are safety capacitors as the AC comes right in from the plug. I know a lot of people will tear them apart, clean them up, and put new safety capacitors in there and basically repack them. I may or may not do that, but at least I will want to replace the safety capacitors. So I'll order those. Now there's other capacitors in that radio that are mica capacitors, and I know those are generally reliable even when they're that old, but you know, they are getting old. But I'm not going to try to replace those unless needed, so I'm going to start with the earlier capacitors that you know are going to be bad and go from there. Okay, so that's where I'm at right now. So right after this I'll go ahead and put my order out for the capacitors, and we'll see how things go on the next part 3. This is Atco signing off.